Money Talks features market makers and leaders within the world of rare collectibles, currency, alternative assets, finance, and everything in between. Join the conversation and take a deep dive into the mind of some of the world's most impactful guests to share their strategies and lessons to dominate their respective fields. Hosted by legendary sports executive, entrepreneur, and investor, David Meltzer. This is Money Talks, presented by Stack's Bowers Galleries. We have some amazing guests coming up, but first, let me introduce you to our host, David Meltzer. David Meltzer grew up poor with a dream of buying his mom a house and a car. Within 9 months of graduating law school, David became a millionaire and achieved that dream. After becoming a multi-millionaire, he then lost over $100 million and built it back to run the most notable sports agency in the world. Considered one of the top esports entrepreneurs and investors, David is also a 3-time international best-selling author, a top 100 business coach, and the host of the Top Entrepreneur Podcast, The Playbook. His life's mission is to empower over 1 billion people to be happy. This simple yet powerful mission has led him on an incredible journey to provide one thing: value. Coming up on this episode of Money Talks, presented by Stack's Bowers Galleries, Peter Tuchman and Mark Salzberg. Mark Salzberg began his career in the collectibles industry as a coin dealer in 1980 and joined Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, NGC, as a grading finalizer in 1988. 10 years later, he became the CEO of NGC and then founded the Certified Collectibles Group, CCG, the following year. CCG now comprises 8 of the world's leading expert and impartial services companies for coins and other collectibles.
Welcome to Money Talks. I'm David Meltzer, and I'm thrilled to have Mark Salzberg with me. He is a legend within the space of collectibles, and he's the chairman at NGC. He is also a senior grading finalizer. Welcome, Mark, to Money Talks.
Happy to be here.
It's great to have you. Now, I'm going to start off at the basic question. What is a senior grading finalizer?
So I have a grading team of coin specialists, coin experts, and they input their grade on their computer at NGC, and I see their grade come up, and I form a consensus, put the final grade in. I've been doing it for 35 years.
Wow, and you've been at the forefront of collectibles and now at the forefront of what's really been an incredible rise in the interest of collectibles. What is it that you attribute to such an exponential rise in the interest in collectibles?
I think for a long time, collectibles were considered, sort of maybe at the best, an emerging asset class. And because of the prices realized history over the last 30, 40 years, people have become more comfortable with how transparent transactions can be with collectibles. Obviously, certification has really, really helped. My company certifies coins, comics, currency, and stamps, and now trading cards. And because we encapsulate them, we preserve them, we guarantee the grade, and we've done it with 75 million items. People now feel very, very comfortable buying and selling those on a regular basis. We've also created tools where people have blueprints of how to collect, which are called registries, and they compete online. So we have hundreds of thousands of people that do that. And, literally, this has become a billion-dollar industry within each vertical.
It's incredible. Within each vertical, too, there's a backlog for grading. And despite so many different efficiencies created by technology and other attributes that can assist us, the demand is literally overwhelming. And what used to take, I have been trading cards for years, what used to take or actually be solicited to get graded now has sometimes up to 2 years of a wait list determinative upon which one of those categories that you're talking about. Do you see the demand slowing down, or do you see technology and capability increasing to handle the amount of demand that is in each of these categories?
Well, I think we had a huge demand based on, what I call the fast money. You had COVID money, you had low interest rates, and that really got things crazy. I think things are normalizing, particularly in cards. The traditional verticals like stamps or coins or even comic books didn't have that speculative run up. Coins in particular are very, very steady. We have backlogs, but not to that extent. And the backlogs for comic books are coming down. Technology will help. AI, which we're incorporating, will definitely help. But we're still in the first or second inning of really penetrating any of these markets. You have a worldwide market, and when it comes to world coins in particular, that's just huge. I mean, you have 100 plus countries and 1,000 years of history, different metals, different denominations. There's a lot of data needed and a lot of expertise needed to evaluate these items. So databases are important. Imaging is super important, and having that expertise, really gives us. Those are the obstacles, and also is our moat to competition.
And, talking to so many experts in this space, all agree that we're just at the beginning, that we can't even understand the size, scope, and scale of different markets within the context of collectibles. What's your outlook as far as growth over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. In particular, I'm a collector. I've been a collector for, since I was a kid. And the high profile items and the very, very best quality in each category have never really gone down. They steadily increase, and I've seen a dramatic increase in the very, very best in coins and comic books and currency, in particular. And that really goes towards the fact that these things are really rare. There have been, if you take U.S. coins in particular, the mintages, they've been we're on the kind of like the downside of the half-life of vintage coins. So we've graded the majority of vintage coins that are out there, and we know based on our repopulation reports, how these things have survived, and the very, very best are always collected. There's a lot of depth to the U.S. market, a lot of depth in the comic book market, U.S. coin market, and particularly currency market. So I'm really optimistic because we add people all the time to the registry. Collectors feel comfortable. And if you're a collector, if you have that gene, you want to complete sets. And I don't see, every time I sell a really great coin, I regret it, put it that way. So over time, it's not like stocks or bonds. You have to have a long-term perspective on these items. And I've been at the forefront of, creating tools, or our company has created tools and made people very, very comfortable. And I started seeing, guys like the hedge fund guys coming into coins 10 years ago. They're converting from, those assets into tangibles. And I don't see the trend reversing at all. I think it's going to even increase.
And to that measure, there's certain categories that may outperform others here in the next 5 years. Do you have any favorites?
Yeah, I love world coins because they're just starting to embrace certification, believe it or not, even though we've been doing it for so long. It's just one of those things. I just don't understand why world dealers are not sending their coins into us directly, or currency into us directly. They're allowing people to buy it raw, meaning ungraded. And then what happens is the smart guys buy those coins or currency, they send them into us, and they put them right back into European auctions. So I think world coins have a long way to go. U.S. World currency has a long way to go. I particularly love ancient coins. We're the only ones in the world that grade ancient coins and certify them. They're fantastic. And holding one of them in your hand, it really exerts power. They're just wonderful items. They're in some cases 2,000 years old or older, and they're really inexpensive, $50, $75. Now there's there's $1 million ancients, but most of them are lower in value and collectible, and the entry point is quite reasonable.
And when we look at the world market, obviously in the past it was difficult to ascertain or obtain the different world coins or ancient coins. Where are some of the best places today that we can find different category items on the world market, not just coins, but other things that may be valuable?
Auctions, of course, are the number one place. I also would urge your viewers to find a dealer that they feel comfortable with, that's reputable. We vet our dealers. We have thousands of dealers that have to make certain criteria, hit certain criteria to become authorized dealers. But that'll help guide them. Also, auctions like Heritage and Stack's Bowers. It's easy enough to really view those auctions, look at prices realized, look at the past history, and get comfortable. That's why we have growing markets. That's why these are not emerging asset classes. That's why they're asset classes now. So there's a lot of information out there, and it's just like anything else. You have to educate yourself in this area. You can't just throw a dart. You really have to get some guidance.
And then, in my opinion, in every category, there's kind of a pragmatic look and also an emotional attachment. And for example, comic books can have an additive value because of an emotional attachment that people can have to a certain comic book, especially as they become properties of movies and other content that can raise the awareness. Do you see emotionally attached assets like a comic book doing well in the future compared to, just say, gold?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, these characters, the movies are driving these high prices and the awareness of these characters. But there's the emotional attachment of knowing, the nostalgia attachment. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many attorneys and doctors, 50-year-olds are just giddy over these comic books. I'm not a comic book guy, but they're holding $500,000 comic books, and they're literally like a kid. I get it because I understand it. Coins would make me feel the same way, but I wasn't fortunate enough to buy comic books. And when I was a kid, we didn't have the dough to spend 10 cents or 25 cents on a comic book. And I really it didn't catch on for me. But there's other aspects of the comic book market that interest me, and that's the original comic art. And even though I haven't played in it, it was suggested to me long ago that was going to be on fire, and it really has done extraordinarily well. There's definitely, I was talking to some Wall Street guys about this. There's an emotional attachment to coins that you don't, or collectibles, I should say, that you don't have in stocks. Who cares if you sell your Apple? If you're making a profit, you can always buy it back. But if you sell your, Hulk 181 and 9.8, or you sell your 1863 silver dollar in 67, it's emotional to get rid of that. It's emotional when you buy it. It's emotional when you sell it. And that's the difference between traditional assets and collectibles. And I think that's a positive, because you're irrational. I have 50 of the same thing. It doesn't make any sense, but my wife's like, why? And I said, because I have to. It's just how I'm built. And there's a lot of me out there. There's a lot of guys like us out there. Thank God, because we built our company with like-minded people and surrounded ourselves with like-minded people. So there's a lot of us out there, believe it or not.
Oh, I believe it. I ran the most notable sports agency in the world with a gentleman named Lee Steinberg at Lee Steinberg Sports Entertainment. And I remember when I started as CEO, and I said, well, I'm getting, I thought we were a sports agency. And he said, David, we are in the business of the irrationality of middle-aged men. He said, if I could take this football right here, put a signature on it, and get $50,000 for it, this is the business of irrationality of middle-aged men. And it seems as if today middle-aged men and women both participate in that irrational valuation. But even beyond the irrationality and the emotional aspect, there still has to be authentication
Yeah.
because technology can help us, but it also can hurt us because people can create duplicatives and other things where you need an expert eye to that. How long do you have to train someone in order to have that type of eye and experience to make sure that what they grade something as is truly warranted?
So there's two-part answer to that. I think the best graders were the ones who were dealers because there's a market component to this, right? If you look at something that is slightly circulated and it has a mint state look, you wouldn't sell that as a dealer as almost uncirculated. You would ask mint state money. So that's one aspect, and then having the feel of looking at coins as a dealer is very, very important. You see a lot of different things. The overall, the overarching concern is authentication and also figuring out if something's been altered. So you can't do that unless you see a tremendous amount of items. So you have to have an eye for it. You have to have a passion for it. Now, when I was doing this, when I started out 35, 40 years ago, there was a lot of raw material. You could go to a show and that's what you looked at was raw material. Today, the best way to become a great grader, an authenticator, is to do it at a grading service because all the collectibles come to a grading service to begin with because that's where they increase in value because they're authenticated, graded, guaranteed, and that's what the public wants. So once they're certified by us, then they reach maximum value, and then they can be sold, they can be monetized more easily. So it depends on the area. I know it's a long-winded question, or a long-winded answer, but if you're a comic grader, you typically have a specialty in, let's call it golden age or silver age, or you were modern. And at CGC, you can learn the broad spectrum of it by being there every day and getting to see this material. Same in coins and currency. But you have to feel it. You have to be there. You have to see it. And the only way we're sort of like the Harvard of collectibles. If you don't, this is the place to go if you want the best education.
And they do get the best there. Last question, real quick. I can't help but ask a great collector and a great eye like you, emotionally, not value-wise, but emotionally, what's your favorite thing you've collected?
It's definitely coins, and it's definitely U.S. coins. I think the greatest coin I have, and it's not the most valuable, but it sort of typifies my collection. It's an 1864 $2.50 gold piece, and it's Civil War era. They only made, like, I think 2,400 of them. So think about that small mintage, right? And I have one that is literally at the day it came, the very moment it came off the out of the die, as after it was struck, somebody must have caught it and just put it away. And it's acquired this amazing skin and patina. And the closest grade to that is probably 5 points difference or 6 points difference.
Wow.
And it's just spectacular. So you have to wonder how an 1864 2.5, which was, minuscule mintage, survived like this, acquired this kind of patina. And that kind of typifies my collection. I collect sort of miracles, freak items. So I would say that to me is a very emotional coin. I've had it for 20 years or so. And every coin in my forever box is like that. So I'm a lucky guy.
Yes, sir. I have a emotional attachment to my Tony Gwynn signed 394 when he batted 394 for the Padres, personal one of 394. bats that he had created. And I never thought I could be emotionally attached to a multi-million-dollar sports collection that I have. Anything as my hero signed that bat for me as a sports agent. But I will tell you, I do have a Gary Vaynerchuk, a Gary V signed Crushing It poster, 1 of 500 from when he launched his book that may someday be more emotionally and more valuable. Ironically, how entrepreneurs are becoming famous, especially that guy. So, Mark Salzberg, you may be finding yourself authenticating and grading posters of entrepreneurs someday. Who knows? But the world's definitely on the rise, and so are collectibles. And it's so nice to know that there is a credible, honest, trustworthy place that we can go to find out what the true grade and what the true authenticity of our items are. Thank you so much for lending your expertise here today, Mark. We appreciate you. Thanks for joining Money Talks. We'll see you soon.
I'm excited to hear from our next guest, Peter Tuchman. Peter Tuchman began his career as a clerk on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It didn't take long for Tuchman to become a broker with a Wall Street career that's taken him from the crash of 1987 to the boom of the 90s and beyond. 35 years later, there's still no place he'd rather be. Peter's passion for the market, coupled with his distinct features and animated persona, have made him the most iconic trader at the New York Stock Exchange and the most photographed man on Wall Street.
Welcome to Money Talks with David Meltzer, and I have the most iconic New York stockbroker in history. He's called the Einstein of Wall Street, and for a reason. Peter Tuchman, welcome to Money Talks.
Thank you so much, David. Thrilled to be here, guys. Congratulations on the new show.
Thank you so much for joining us on the new show. And look, there's so much that has changed throughout your career being on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. What do you see most that has changed from the early days as being a stockbroker on the floor to today?
So I'm really happy that we're doing this, and I'm here. We're here on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Market is closed. I believe Mr. Kramer is on the other side of the room about to start his show. And I've been here for 37 years. Some say 137 years. For me, look, due to technology in any business, we are seeing a bit of an outsourcing of the human being. And there's probably very few businesses where it is as important as this one, where the human element is maintained, curated, embraced as the markets, right? As money, right? You're talking about what money talks, who's listening. At the end of the day, people have been trading something, whether it's a commodity, whether it was back in the day in the 16th and 17th century, trading tulip bulbs or commodities of any kind, whether it be gold or silver or spices or whatnot. Throughout history, one human being to another, there has been trading. I think it sort of represents the whole beginning of humankind in so many ways. And I would be able to go back to outside the New York Stock Exchange back in the 1700s under the buttonwood tree. It was one human being to another, trading whatever it may be, a stock when companies started to go public, a commodity, whether it was gold, silver, lumber, or potatoes. And then there was actually an agreement that was done in the late 1700s called the Buttonwood Agreement, which basically established your word is your bond from one human being. When you and I are doing business, right? We may not interact, we may not exchange cash per se, but that when you and I make a deal and our word is our bond, then we have an agreement from one human being to another, trust and whatnot. So for me, back when I started here in 1987, there were 8,000 people in this room. There was a support staff. There were squads and runners and clerks and reporters. And it was the open outcry, the great years of open outcry. Everyone should go back and see the original Wall Street movie with Michael Douglas or the later movies that you've seen or a lot of old footage, where the human element and open outcry was the way we screamed and yelled and traded stocks. And I could, it's a quarter for 100,000, 100,000 and a half, take them. It's a half for 100,000 to go to take them. I'll sell you 200,000, a quarter for $1 million. Let's do it. So there was that wild and enthusiasm, adrenaline, which is what attracted me to this business in the first place. So unfortunately, over time and technology, a lot of human beings have been outsourced in every business, not just ours. And so I would think the biggest change, even though here at the New York Stock Exchange, we still are the last bastion of capitalism, the last market where there are human beings involved, that is probably the biggest change, where technology and the handheld computer has outsourced a lot of the human beings that were here and a lot of the support staff.
And to that measure, there's a lot of security that comes from the technology. There's a lot of transparency that comes through the technology. But there's also a lot of manipulation and information that comes through technology. And both you and I have had discussions on how now so many people can be involved in trading, but yet, unfortunately, there's no financial literacy, there's no financial education, and so many people are being manipulated or taken advantage of. And unfortunately, the majority of the people that are being taken advantage of when it comes to trading or collectibles, et cetera, are getting misinformation and guided in the wrong direction. What can we do to help people understand just basics of trading, whether it's gold or whether it's stocks or whether it's sneakers, whatever it may be, to understand how a market works and how best to invest in that market?
So look, technology, obviously, I still don't own a computer, so I don't really embrace technology that much. But at the end of the day, it's offered us a lot of things. Information is one of them, right? But it's also given us access to bad information, right? There's an information highway, and it's very hard behind the walls of a cell phone or a computer to vet the information that you're having. And what I will often say to people is, look, there are a lot of people, and we've seen it a lot lately. There are a number of people on Twitter Spaces and other organizations. They create a community. It's the old Jordan Belfort pump and dump syndrome, where if I create a community and I have a lot of people who sort of trust me and I give them stock signals and things to buy when I've already gone out and bought these commodities or these entities, and then I go to my people, my 60,000 or 600,000 people who follow me, who are in my community, I tell them to go buy it. And when they're all rushing to buy it on fear of missing out, I'm out there selling it. It's a classic pump and dump. So there is a lot of information out, a lot of bad information out there. There are a lot of bad actors in the space. And I believe the only defense against this is to learn how to navigate the market successfully yourselves. I can give you a toolbox. I can fill it with tools. The best way not to be taken advantage of from a rug pull or a scam is for you to do the homework yourself.
You also, although you may not utilize a computer, you do utilize social media to educate and to raise awareness. And you also are in the collectible space. You have launched your own NFT, understanding and building a marketplace for the betterment of all. How do you see this new future of collectibles and trading collectibles when it comes to, for example, your NFT?
So, look, unfortunately, look, we had the heyday of crypto for a while. We had the heyday of NFTs, where everybody with a pudgy penguin or a funny looking chimp could launch it back in 2021, and it would sell out instantly. And, and everyone would buy them and trade them and this and that. And people thought they had value. But at the end of the day, what we've seen often with bubbles and with bursts and with trends and with excitement, irrational enthusiasm, that if there's no utility behind it, then at the end of the day, it's a short-term play, right? It's like, you can be rich and you can be wealthy. Being rich is someone who has money for a short period of time. Wealth is something that's built over time, that's sustainable for you, your children, your children's children. Look, if you love something and you're buying it for its use, that's one thing. But if you're buying it for its value, look, in the old days, gold was something that was being bought because we had been taught that it was a hedge against inflation, that if you bought something that had physical value, that you would always be able to transfer it into cash if you needed that. And when markets were going up, people would sell the gold and they would get into equities. When the markets would go down, people would buy something that they could hold in their hand. We were sold a bit of a bill of goods around crypto that way, because people thought, okay, this digital currency is going to be a hedge against inflation, a hedge against the downward market. In fact, it turned out not to be that way. When markets went up, crypto went up. When markets went down, crypto went down. And what we've seen over the last year is the markets come up against some headwinds, and it's been a bit of a hurricane, as it were, and crypto's gone down, NFTs have gone down, and the only ones, the survival of the fittest, are ones where there is real utility.
What I love talking with you about is not collectibles, but capabilities. And you're so good at distinguishing whether it's stocks or sneakers or gold or silver or other collectibles, NFTs, crypto, talking about the capabilities, and then adding to it an essential component, which you're an expert at only through experience, which I call timing and risk tolerance. It's very hard to understand timing and risk tolerance if you haven't been around for a little bit of time. And I find a lot of people that have started or dipped their toe may have a dip the toe timing, but someone that's been on the stock exchange floor for as long as you has great perspective of timing and risk tolerance. Where do you see the outlook for the markets today, considering someone who has such a great, vast wealth of knowledge when it comes to understanding for yourself, giving the toolbox with the non-fungible Tuchman of the capabilities of knowing this is aligned with my timing and risk tolerance?
You know what? Look, where I find the ultimate value comes, and I learned this from you, and I recently nicknamed me the connector, right? And I was on a call the other night, and someone said that the opposite of addiction is connection, right? And so, you know, addiction is something that when someone uses to take you to a very high place for a very short period of time, it doesn't have sustainable value. But connection does, putting the connection of people to opportunity, right? And so I see that. Look, when somebody asks me, they'll come to me and say, you know what, Peter, what should I invest in? What do you see is something that has growth? And it's very hard for me to do that. I try and say to them, find something. First of all, you and I love to try and get people to find something they love to do. It's not our line, but it's a great line. You'll never work a day in your life if you find something you love to do. Then we are one of the greatest consumer generations in the world too. We love to buy stuff, right? And I'm a firm believer, 1 to 9, it's not my line, but it's one. Look, I'm just a function of all the wonderful things I've learned. This answers your question. I am a function of I'm a good listener. I am forever a humble student of life and the markets. And it's a matter of putting together all the things I've learned over time. I'm a firm believer in investing in stocks and not stuff, right? Things that have value to me. We love the things we love, but they have value to everybody in a different sort of a way. Risk tolerance is a funny thing. Look, I cannot be your financial advisor and I can't tell you what to invest in for the future. But I think if you invest in a skill and a mindset about positivity, about motivation, look, I'm a firm believer. Look, my parents are Holocaust survivors. They came to this country after their families were decimated with absolutely nothing. My father felt himself a humanist, right? Connecting people, being able to empower other people. He felt that what you can get from someone else by just holding their hand. He became a very well-known doctor, and he was not somebody who was able to adopt to the new world of computers. He felt he could find out more from a patient by just walking into the room, looking in their eyes and holding their hand. So I beg everyone we are in an environment where we hide behind our phones, we hide behind our computers. That's kind of why I love and endorse, and I'm the ambassador of the floor of the stock exchange, because I think we never should ever, and this is what you do, never lose sight of the power of one human being connecting another. When you were out on Times Square a couple of months ago, you talked about that the value and the strength that we can get one person talking to another, and then that person hearing the message and sharing that with one other person, even though that seems sort of very short term and not a big thinking concept in this world we have of information and the metaverse and all that kind of stuff. It's so much more significant and important.
Yeah, it sure is. And you also give a class on doing your best, learning lessons, and having fun. And I know most people don't realize that you and I have a great tax strategy as well. And that's the tax strategy of sharing our dummy tax, which I always say by sharing our dummy tax, and you and I have paid enough dummy tax for probably the entire country, but we are humble enough to illuminate that dummy tax so that other people don't have to pay it, which I always tell people when they ask me for different tax advice or tax strategies. I said, let me tell you about my dummy tax, and now I know confidently that I'm setting you forth in the right trajectory. Well, Peter, you're setting forth so many people in that trajectory with your non-fungible Tuchman, with your unbelievable human understanding of markets and of understanding the idea behind a toolbox so that we can make more money, help more people, and have more fun. It's an honor to have an icon in the midst of money, Talks. This is David Meltzer with Peter Tuchman. Thanks for joining me, my friend.
Absolutely a pleasure, sir. Honored.
Thanks for watching today's episode of Money Talks, presented by Stack's Bowers Galleries. See you next time. Mark